Good morning. Good morning. It's Teresa with Spill the Tea Tuesday, and today I'm here with Danielle she's the founder of Modern Reiki, which is a Reiki certification program. She's a meditation guide, devout student to the study of our energetic field, astrology nerd, and a believer that laughter and levity will save us all. All of these modalities, plus her background in management and leadership from a decade plus in the corporate world, influence her work now, which I can't wait to talk about, which includes cultivating life-changing healing experiences with one-on-one sessions, workshops, retreats, and Reiki. Hi, Danielle. How are you today?
Hi, Teresa. I'm so good.
Thank you so much for being here live with us.
You're welcome. On time.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Divine
Okay.
timing is what I always say. We got here in divine timing. That's all that matters.
Hey, it works. It works. So, how's your week been? How was your long weekend?
It was so good. We got really blessed. We moved and got the house in this neighborhood that for next year will be the 50th anniversary that they do this massive block party for the entire neighborhood all weekend long.
Oh my gosh, how
So
fun.
it's so fun and nostalgic and just wholesome. Like we were just saying all weekend, we're like, it's just so wholesome and sweet. And so we had such a good time.
Good,
Yeah.
good. I always feel like the morning after a long weekend is always a little intense. This morning I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off, like, wait a second, I have so much to do today. So I think that us pushing an hour later was perfect.
I agree with you. No, it's funny. It's we woke up this morning, we're like, okay, back to real. We have to go back to doing things for work today. We have to go back to being totally dialed in, back to eating really healthy, all the good things.
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I'm going to share your intro with the world. It's going to show up in the comment section. So that way everyone can see who you are, what you're about, what you do. But I definitely want to talk about Reiki today. And I mean, I guess, would you say you're my master trainer, practitioner? How would you describe that?
Yeah, I always say that. So the person who taught me, she was my Reiki master and teacher, right? And then, of course, just guide, friend, sister, all the things that get wrapped up into that.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, and for me, when I found you, like even again, it's kind of that divine timing, right? And it's like I met you and it was our circles ended up hitting way later. I mean, way later, few months, but
Yeah.
still I knew based off of what you've created in this space with your practice that I wanted to be a part of that. And that's I wanted to learn the ways that you conduct, I mean, the exchange, right? So I want to ask you, as I'm embarking and offering Reiki now a little bit
Yeah.
more and putting it out in the open, I get a lot like, well, what is this? What does this all involve? What does it mean? How does it work? So I want to ask you that.
Can this, record it, can it, and then we'll have it. It's always the best question because depending on who you're speaking to, which we've talked about, right? Sometimes I use a myriad of different ways to explain it. I want to be able to have a medium and a language when I'm speaking to someone that it's going to land, right? So I used to be in the corporate world. I'll still go do corporate retreats from time to time. We host things here at our space here in Scottsdale for corporate teams. And when I'm talking in that arena, I always just say it's an ancient Japanese healing technique that promotes relaxation, breeds creativity, allows you to sleep better. Boom, right? Or I'll say ancient Japanese hands-on healing technique. When I'm going into more of an echo chamber are people who are more exposed to this work, who already have practices in the energetic realm, breath work, yoga, etc. I always add that we're channeling divine light into the body and it's going to intuitively go where it needs to go, wherever the energy is the densest. This high vibration will come in and help release that tension, release those stories. And at the same time, from the higher level perspective, if we can start to integrate and accept all parts of ourselves, then that in itself promotes healing. right? We soften, we allow ourselves to be seen and witnessed. We allow ourselves to be loved when we're accepting our own bodies, our own minds, our own stories. So there's a myriad of ways to describe it. And depending on who you're talking to, it's kind of pick your own adventure. But
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Now would you say, like, I know that you've worked with so many people, and how long have you been in the world of Reiki?
So I essentially got Reiki 1 attuned in 2013. But that was when I was right in the corporate world. I was kind of climbing the corporate ladder. I had no intention of stopping that train. But I did need a tool to help me deal with massive anxiety I was having. I was in a huge transition. I was getting promoted. I was doing all these things. I was traveling all the time, but my anxiety was through the roof. And every doctor was just trying to prescribe things. And I was like, this is not getting to the root of the problem. I know it's not. So Reiki was that thing that kind of cracked me open in my mid 20s to, oh, I need to like love myself at a higher level. I need to rely on something bigger than me to help hold and support me. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So when you first, do you remember what you were expecting or what was surprising or different the very first time you ever experienced Reiki for yourself?
Absolutely. So I remember it distinctly. I was in like a really bad space, and I share this story from time to time. I'd had my first panic attack. I was in the Denver airport. Hey, there you go. On a layover, and literally had to go find a medic. Like, it was so bad. I didn't know what was happening. And if anyone's ever dealt with any anxiety disorder, anything like that, you know what I'm talking about. You think you're dying. No one can convince you that you're not.
Mhm.
And I landed and I was like, I've got to find something, because the doctor, again, like I said, was just trying to prescribe things. I was like, okay, I'm going to get back into yoga. And I'd gone to my yoga studio, and there was a Reiki share that evening. And they're like, just come. I was like, I don't even know what this is. I'll try it. I'll try anything. Right. And so I went up there, and it was, you got 15 minutes with different practitioners because they were all practicing essentially. But I was blessed that I got to, one of my first sessions was with who ended up becoming my teacher, because she was the teacher of the whole group. And the minute she laid her hands on me, I don't know where I went. I remember like time traveling. I remember getting the message very distinctly that I'd done it before, that I was supposed to remember this work. And I'd really never had kind of one of those spiritual aha moments before. So for me, it was really not jarring, but it took me a while to assimilate what that meant. Right. But I did sign up that night for level 1, which was starting in a couple weeks. And I go, sure, like something just happened and I don't know what it was, but sign me up. I'm ready to go.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and
Mhm.
I think that from level 1, just so for those watching that don't know, level 1 is when you learn to practice on yourself. So it's all about this self practice in Reiki, um, which is so, so powerful and necessary before you start working on others, right? So why would you say that that is, why is that necessary?
I tell people, I'm like, if you don't understand how your own house is built, if you don't understand how your body works and moves and assimilates to the outside world, then how in the heck could you ever start to learn how someone else's does? And so level 1 is about this intense, I always call it's just like a philosophy and a study of your own energetic body, of all the stories that you hold and carry. Um, it's usually not, not a coincidence that when someone goes through level 1, they're also probably dipping their toe into somatic therapy for the first time and doing all these different modalities to really unpack the stories that make them who they are. And this is just another way to do that feels so safe, so loving. It also helps you practice the art of receiving, which so many of us are not innately at. Receiving in a way that feels safe and that we're really open to messages or intuition, to other people giving us love and filling us up. So I say, if you can't fill up your own cup first, and there's no way it can overflow to start working with and guiding others when you get to your level 2 and your level 3.
So,
For
what
sure.
is something that people can expect to come out of level 1 in that self practice?
I always say it's this like deep appreciation of self, And I'd
Mhm.
like to hear your perspective because you've gone through level one. Mine's been over 10 years ago at this point. But
Yeah.
I remember going through and thinking, oh my gosh, there's so much more to me. Even just the concept of my physical body doesn't stop where my skin meets the air, right? We are so much energetically bigger than that. And our impact because of that is so much more expansive. And so feeling that and also understanding that I have the ability to create my reality based off of what I am radiating into the world. And at that time, I was running events with hundreds of people every weekend. I was flying every weekend. I was in really high stress situations, but understanding that if I could really monitor and harness my own energy, that I could create the outcomes around me that felt safe and nurturing to me.
Yeah. Well, for level 1 for me, it was almost that I experienced Reiki first, like being done, like experiencing the service. Um, I mean, I hate calling it a service because to me it's not a service. It's this exchange of energy, right? I
Yeah.
don't know what other word to use, but the experience. I did not even know what I was walking into, to be honest. My ears were plugged, and I went and had like an ear coning session, and she happened to do Reiki. And she said, "Do you mind if I do Reiki on you?" And I had no idea what it was. I just knew that when it was all said and done, and I was leaving that appointment, she wanted to chit chat a little bit afterwards. And after that was all said and done, I had this new lightness about me and this new clarity. And I was like, what did she do? You know, it was like, not only did you clean out my ears, but whatever you did, like, I definitely felt a change in me.
Yeah.
And there was multiple times after that, and that was, gosh, easily over 15 years ago. So there was multiple times after that that I started just exploring it. And it's like if someone was offering Reiki, I was interested and wanted to experience it. For me, I like to meditate. I know some people feel like they cannot meditate, but I think that Reiki actually puts me into that state faster, um, to where you do get the downloads and the clarity, and it's giving yourself time, especially when you're in a corporate situation or you're super busy and your plate is so full. It gives you that time where it's like, you have to relax. It's not just going to sleep at night, like going to bed because you're exhausted. It's actually spending time in the quiet with, most of the time, really relaxing, beautiful music. And it's like a different tap in. And so that was why I was so attracted to it, because it was like, wow, like if I can jump into a meditative state faster to get more clarity and to understand who I am better. Now, as far as the quantum physics of it, I did not understand what was actually happening or what was going on. I just knew that it was the time that I gave myself. It's almost like the non-negotiable, because you're laying there and with a practitioner, and you don't have you have no choice but to lay there and relax, you know? Um, and that was not something that I had regularly practiced when I was first introduced to Reiki. So when I started actually practicing on myself, and then it was like incorporating that with that meditation, and visualization has always been something strong through me. That was when it was like, oh, wow, this is a game changer. This feels a lot different. This connects me in a different way. It adjusts even the things that I'm working towards. It's almost like your subconscious starts walking a different direction for you. So you don't have to understand it in your mind. You just start moving.
Yeah. I love that analogy. That is one of the biggest things I hear with everyone coming through level one is this practice just feels so nourishing, and having it in my back pocket has changed the way I show up in the world.
Mm.
So, we always talk about, and we talked about this too when we were going through level two, it's like we have stimulus and response, and there's a space there, the Viktor Frankl quote, if anyone's read Man's Search for Meaning. But if you can just make that gap bigger and bigger and bigger, and stimulus comes in, you're triggered, whatever you want to call it, and then your response gets further away. There's more space to breathe, more space to answer from an authentic point of view versus just reacting
Mhm.
from a historical way you've always reacted to something. that's when we feel more in control of ourselves, our lives, what we're creating, what we're calling in. And that practice allows you to do that. Because when you're doing a self practice, which you learn in level one for folks listening, you start to just understand what stories are operating in different parts of your body. You start to understand where you hold stress around certain things. You can start to fortify yourself if you know this person historically I have to go meet with activates me in some sort of way. Well, then how do I give that part of me more love, more attention, more intention before I go into that space, right?
Yeah.
And then you're just hyper responsible for your own state of being. I think that's the biggest piece too. I am responsible for how I'm reacting, how I'm interacting, how I'm holding space for others, and how I'm taking care of myself.
Yeah. I think for a lot of clients that ask me or have, they want to know, well, what should I expect? What am I looking for? And it's like, don't expect, don't look, just be. And that's the hardest thing for most of them, right? I'm sure because you work with so many corporate clients as well. So what would you say, what would be your suggestion to get out of your head when you're going into a Reiki experience?
Well, I always say, and it's one of the posits of meditation, right? I'm like, let your mind race, let it go. Like, literally let it race. Don't chase it. At some point, you will get tired and you will succumb to what you're feeling right now. We so often they get caught in the loop. I do it too still. I have to, catch myself of my mind is racing. Oh no, 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 I can't do this. I'm supposed to be focusing right now. And versus just letting the thought trail on. And I always say our brains and that part of ourselves is so archaic and it's like a toddler, like it just has to get tired and it'll soften. Except my brain and my mind is racing. Okay, I'll let it for a minute.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just this softening that happens throughout the whole process. And that allows, I always tell people, I'm like, don't get in your head, let it race. I promise you, once we start to work, it will settle down. And 9 times out of 10, it always does. Right. So I always tell people that I say, stay so curious. You're about to experience something that maybe you've never felt before. And isn't that just cool? How often do we get to have new experiences that we haven't felt or we don't have an expectation to what's about to happen? Like that's magical. Embrace that for this moment.
Yeah.
And there's no wrong way to receive it. Some people see insane colors. Some people have journeys to different, like celestial spaces. Some people go into the ocean. Some people rest and they go to sleep. And it's the most rested they felt in a long time. It's so different for everybody, right? So, and different for every person depending on when they're receiving, because you are a nuanced, very complicated being. We all are. So whatever you need in that moment, it will come to you. Yeah, and trusting that.
So who would you say Reiki is for versus who is it not for?
Everyone. I say if everyone could do a self practice in the morning before they left the house, we probably have, I don't know, 3/4 less of the world's problems going on, because it just puts you into a space of you filled your own cup up. So you're just bubbling out and you're radiating a lot of love and a lot of acceptance for yourself. So you go out into the world and then you're giving that to other people and the opportunity and permission to do so. Um, Level one, I say, is for every single soul on the planet, unless you are so adverse to it that you couldn't sit still and it would be terrible for you, right? If it doesn't align with your belief system, then great. There probably is something within your doctrine that you study or are in service to that gives you the same feeling. It's connecting to a higher source and a power, right? So I honestly, that's the only time I would ever say it's not for someone if it doesn't have an alignment with their belief system, because it's really important to live a life in alignment and integrity with what you believe to be true. Um, but for everyone else, I'm like, it's for moms, it's for CEOs, it's for the person who literally is like just trying to figure out what they want to do in the world. It's for every single human being who wants to know themselves at the highest level and be hyper responsible for how they show up in the world. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the attunement and the process. And we go from level 1 going into level 2, and then
Mhm.
obviously up to level 3. I shouldn't even say up to, just to level 3.
Yeah.
And there's this integration period, right? So I want you to just talk about that. What does that like? What I know what it is, or like what it is to me based off of the experience, but from like for the fact that you teach and guide other people through this journey, how do you explain that integration?
So when you go through each level, you go through a beautiful sacred ceremony where essentially this is where we get woo, so strap in folks. You go through this beautiful sacred ceremony where the person either sitting or lying down. I do my ceremony sitting, and we are essentially programming your field to receive this work and open up this channel at the highest level so that you can be this channel for this divine healing energy that's available to all of us. And during that ceremony, it almost is like I keep always use the joke that it's like swiffering. It's like a light swiffer for your system. So anything that's in there that's dense or blocking you from receiving, it just kind of cleans it up for you. And after that process happens and after we're in ceremony together, then the 21 days afterwards is this like really deep, it's like house cleaning, spring cleaning for your body. And it goes through each chakra multiple times. And your chakras are your energy centers in the body that are associated with major organs and different energetic density in the body. So it goes through each single space and clears and starts to release. So, a lot of people are very emotional or they're euphoric because they're getting this density cleared out of their body. But I always say, diets can change, the way you move your body can change. People will get an inclination to just kind of move a little differently in the world or how they approach others. I tell people to stay really open to what that experience is for them. Practitioners who are attuning other people, I will say it to them blue in the face. Like, you should always hold individuals through that 21-day process because it's a lot of things that can come up to be processed, to be released. Um, you may feel sad or like you're re-experiencing things too in your life that you've gone through because your body's just trying to reacclimate, right?
Yeah.
From a different perspective. So, but it's beautiful, and you're not the same on the other side. I've done this multiple times in the last 10 years. I've sat with so many folks going through this process, and no one is the same at the end in the best way. Yeah.
Yeah, that change is real. That 21 days is real. And I mean, I'm sure that it for some even goes beyond that, right? I mean, 21 days is kind of the guide number, but it could
Yeah.
be like shorter, longer. There's definitely some shifts though. I know that going from level 2 attunement just this past month, I had initially, and it's one of those things, I think this is something that's so misconstrued with, and people ask about energy work in general. It's like, well, what am I feel? What's going to happen? And it's like, well, we can't really answer that. We don't know what's going to happen because, as you said, it's individual. But there is a different if you pay attention and you're mindful, I feel like most people, if not everyone, will notice the shifts that they're making. And that's why I mentioned it's almost this subconscious shift. And then it's like you start thinking about it and you're like, oh, well, this feels different. Oh, I'm doing this with a different intention. The way that I'm handling this situation is coming from a different space than what it would have even a month ago. I know for me, it was like I all of a sudden felt this extreme urge to change what I was eating, to eat healthier, to be cleaner, to start moving and exercising a lot more because I knew that that was something just in general for me. My body was craving it. And I wasn't making and allowing myself the time.
Yeah.
But that's again going into that phase of, well, if I'm going to work on other people, I need to be at my best. And if I don't feel that I'm at my best, then I probably shouldn't serve others in this way. So there is a huge shift. It's huge. But
Absolutely.
it's almost it's it's hard to explain it because it's more of a feeling, right? Unless you have something where it's like, "Oh, I'm seeing visions and this is super strong and this is coming up heavy." The actual personal shifts, I feel like, are almost so subtle that you have to pay attention to notice them.
I call it like the quantum leap that lasts a year, like that. I'm not a big believer in like, boom, I'm healed. That just doesn't. People can go to psychedelic and plant medicine ceremonies. They still need tons of integration. There's no overnight change, right? You can make decisions that you can enact in an instant, but you're not going to feel the benefits of that for months, right? It takes time. And I always say with this work, it's you look back 6 months later or a year later and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm in a place that I wanted to be in. I'm operating in the world in a way that I always dreamed of operating in the world. And that is powerful, right? Like that is well, that's, how did I explain this the other day? So if everything in nature grows organically, right? Nothing puts itself in a bigger, like a snail. I'm going to use the worst analogies. Stick with me. They're going to be so nerdy. Like a snail doesn't go find a new shell until he's ready. Crabs don't go, like, you don't pop something out and go put yourself into something bigger than you need it to be. Flower buds bloom when they're ready.
Mhm.
And we expect ourselves to instantaneously have these massive shifts. And it's so not kind to our nature. We are nature. We are nothing different. Was that the card? Is that what we talked about at your attunement, right? The whole we are one with
Yeah.
nature. It's like we are no different than anything else. We need to ground ourselves so our energy is not frenetic and it's calm. We need to nourish ourselves. We need sunlight. We need water. We are nature. So why would we expect ourselves to grow any other way? And when we can see the magic of that unfolding that feels organic and safe and on time, whatever that timing is, that is actual growth and change. Not these things we do quick that we're like, this is going to fix me. Nope. No, it's not. It's over time, you're going to have a shift and a change.
So over the last 10 years, where do you remember and know of the biggest shift and change that happened for you? Especially going through all of these chapters of working with other people and attuning others. Where was your biggest shift that you can recall like right now?
I would say after I went through my Reiki master level, and then I knew without a doubt I was supposed to be teaching this work, that's when, at the time, I was managing part of a really successful sales floor. I was one of the only female managers in the company doing sales. I had earned myself a beautiful position, beautiful office, great paycheck, all the things. And dream job. I worked down by the beach in San Diego. Like I biked to work every day. If I traveled for work, I was flying to these beautiful cities and staying in hotels. Like I had reached a level of success that my whole family was like, don't you dare walk away from that, right? Like no one in our family has ever made that kind of money, has ever had that type of position. And I was so not fulfilled after I went through. I knew what I was supposed to be doing. And I was taking those practices and implementing with my team, which is why they were beautifully growing in the company and I was getting to promote and all this stuff because they were using these practices themselves. But, you know, when I decided to just say I was up for a promotion and I was like, I can't take it. I just can't. I know this is not my dark. It's not the way I'm supposed to be in service to the world. And I quit. And it was terrifying and scary. And I had to really shift and rewire my brain from being in a very cutthroat sales corporate space for so long and realign. So that took travel, that took working with my mentor who has since passed, but she like held me beautifully through that whole time because she was my business mentor for a long time, but then we're bringing spirituality into the fold. And so it just helped me. That was probably the biggest shift was after level 3 was like, okay, I know I have to, this is mine to give to the world, and I have a new and different way that I'm doing it. And there's no time to not do it anymore. But then that took years, right, to build what I have now.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what you have now and what you, I mean, even just the most recent shift with the portal.
Yeah. She came to us to grow, right? So I always say, this is what I was talking about, the organic growth. I knew we were supposed to have a brick and mortar space. I knew I needed a space that people could come to for this work that was very intentional. And my business partner, Sam, had been kind of calling in the same thing. And we never saw it coming as fast as it did. But then the space found us, and we're like, okay, organically, this landed. It's time to grow into her. Right. It wasn't this like fighting, grasping energy at all. It was like, ooh, okay, we're being called right now. Right. A stretchy feeling, which
Yeah.
is different than like grasping. So, yeah, when we created the portal, which is in Scottsdale, Arizona, here, it became, oh, this is a place that people have to come to do this work. This is where we're going to be doing our trainings and facilitating and creating other practitioners of sound and Reiki. And everyone's going to know they can come here to fill their cup up, whether it's with one-on-one sessions or group sessions. I'm starting a chakra series tonight. I'm so excited. We're going to be doing a big group Reiki experience focusing on the root this evening. And it'll be for the next 2 months. We're going to be building and growing on this concept. So it's just beautiful to have a space of learning and self-exploration.
Now, how does that differ? And having this new space, how does that differ from this space you were in before? So, again, for those listening that don't know, Danielle and Sam both were working out of the Biltmore, and they would do group facilitations that were
Well, that was one
absolutely.
thing. That was one thing that we're doing.
Oh,
We were
okay.
also, yeah, we were renting space all over town.
Oh, you were.
Yeah,
Okay.
so the Biltmore Hotel here is one of the spaces that we are at regularly, and we're actually hosting a wellness retreat there this summer. But we had both had our own practices as well, and we're just renting all over town. So, and had the opportunity to rent with some of the most beautiful practitioners, beautiful spaces. But it came down to, I need to have, like, this needs a home. Like, it needs to be rooted and planted to grow. Right. And that just became
Ooh.
so clear. So we were traveling two people, like, I would go and do pop-ups at places. Like if a corporate team was in town, I'd go to their Airbnb and do an experience, or we'd go rent a neutral space, right? I used to do some things, pop-ups. Got really creative with like bar spaces. I mean, all kinds of stuff. And which is fantastic. And I still love going to do offsites, but to have a space that I can bring people that I know the minute they just walk in the door, they'll have a sensation of feeling held, which is part of the healing process, was such a non-negotiable for this next chapter of the work.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it so much. Well, and I had no idea that you were going from place to place. So when you do that, are you taking a bunch of things with you, or what does that
Yeah,
look
girl. Like your woo bag. So it's like, I had all my materials and things and my pillows and my bolsters that I'd use for one-on-ones, and it's just a lot. So it's
like? Yeah.
so nice to just have a space that she's like our second home. I call her our woman cave. We can go over there, and like I know where everything's set up. So intentional. We take good care of her, and yeah, that's just such a blessing.
I think I mean, it's so funny because even as I'm thinking about that unfolding and you going with all of your things, um, that's a lot, and it's
Yeah.
like, I do spray tanning, and so sometimes I have to take the tent, I have to take the spray tan machine, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is kind of a pain." That's why I have one
Yeah.
location where I also offer it, and I just can't imagine, because there is a lot, and it's like to create that space, especially when you're doing group work, you want it to be comfortable. Um,
Yeah.
and that to me is so important, and I think that, let's talk about the environment that you create, because that is really one of the things that I think you are a master at creating that environment. Even your voice, even jumping on this live, it's like everything comes down to to that calming level of, I can be at peace when you're speaking, and that's the same energy that you have in these sacred spaces that you create. So let's talk about that environment for a second. How
Yeah.
did that evolve for you? Was that something just very intuitive? Tell me, where'd that come from?
We can go way back. Well, I think that to me, well, first off, for my astrology nerds, I'm a Cancer sun and a Cancer moon. Like my environment and the aesthetics around me are so important. Like I like to nest, I like to create safe, sacred space. Like I love to host because I know I can bring people into our home and they'll be taken care of and fed and all the things. So like that is so important to me. And growing up, I didn't I had variations of that, but life was really chaotic as a child. And so I think being's who I am. I'm kind of a homebody, and for very periods of my time in my childhood, I was all over the place in very chaotic situations, and I always just craved that energy, right? Craved it. And as an adult, it's been like, oh, I can create that now, and I can give other people a safe space to land if they're having that same feeling. Because chaos at home can be a mom who has 3 kids and is trying to navigate a job and a husband, all the things, right?
Right.
That can feel chaotic. So can I create a space I know you can walk into and it just feels calm? So
Mhm.
that came down to, even with the way we did decor in the space, I wanted minimalist. I wanted it to be where nothing was overwhelming to the eye when you come in. And, our space does feel like a home almost, because it's 90 some years old. It has so much history and juiciness in the walls, and it's
Yeah.
charming and cozy and all the things. And so I was like, it's got to be really minimalist in here. I want you to feel like your mind doesn't have to think too much. And we wanted to find a space that was close enough to, like, it's right snuggled right beside Old Town Scottsdale, but it's quiet. It's off the beaten path.
Yeah.
We're in the middle of everything, but we're in our own little secluded corner. And so it's quieter. All of that was really important with finding that space. Down to even the outdoor area where we have a beautiful courtyard and there's you're walking through grapefruit trees and big, beautiful rose bushes and all this to get into the space. So even that is like the portal you're walking through to get to the portal to calm down
Right.
your nervous system. Yeah.
Yes, it's a beautiful space. And it is, I'll be posting a reel soon, but it has all of just like the beautiful plants that from the front, and
Yeah.
you drive up, you park, and you walk through, and you feel like you're in a mini oasis for sure.
Yeah. We feel like, I always said it feels like it almost feels more like it's in Sedona than in Scottsdale, just because the outdoor area. And that's important when we are putting ourselves into a space to receive. The more we can surrender, the safer we feel, the calmer the environment, our nervous system can calm down.
Mhm.
So if our nervous system can calm down, then we can actually be in a state of surrender, which puts us into that theta state, which gives us all the goodies that go along with that, right? And
Yes.
so that's what I literally the other day I had a corporate group in there and they're like, we just feel good just sitting in this room. I was like, yes, exactly. Like just being in this space when you're used to running 100 miles an hour, or you're a high achiever and you're going, going, going all the time, can just be so soothing.
Yes. Yes. Is there anything else that you'd like to add about Reiki in general?
I think that I tell people this all the time. I'm like, you know, breath work has been beautifully rising. I think that sound healing has been beautifully rising in the current vernacular conversation that people are having. And Reiki, for some, it can stump you because it's so simple. It's literally just the laying of hands. I don't need tools. You don't need tools as a practitioner, just yourself and open heart and a pure intention. And you can create this environment for someone. And that can be confusing for people. It seems too simple, right? And I just want to say, if you're interested in doing this work, it's going to keep growing and rising because everything else is getting more acceptance. It's more talked about commonly. People are open to sharing that they're trying these new modalities. And I believe this is one of the next ones that's going to have a really massive worldwide acceptance. So as long as we are continuing to talk about it and open about receiving it and being curious about it, then it's going to start growing organically in the whole of the world in a really beautiful way.
I love that. I think that that's one of the things. It's like with breath work, you have to work, right? You have to do something. And with Reiki, it's like you said, it's so simple. People, especially type A people,
You don't need to do anything. People freak out all the time. I tell them all the time, I'm like, the hardest thing you're going to do, especially in group work, is be in a meditative state for half an hour. Some people can't do it. They're squirming all the time. And I go, just keep, it's like flexing a muscle. Just keep coming back. You will
Yes.
click in. And when you click in, you'll never be the same.
Well, and I think one of the things just to add to that, as far as the simplicity in group work specifically, it's really neat that you walk into this space and you create this sacred ceremony. And even if you're working on someone else, so the people in the room are still receiving.
100%. We're all together. I think that's okay. That's the last thing we'll add is it helps you understand interconnectivity of all things because you feel it. It is so tactile and tangible when you're in a physical room with other people doing this work that your concept of how the world works shifts. Like you can't not shift that. And that is powerful. When we can shift our self-concept of how the world works, like that is next level in terms of expansion and how we see ourselves and others.
And there's so many things in that experience that become undeniable, especially, even with my actual experience for attunement, when another girl in the same room picked up something a message I was supposed to receive. And I think that's when you experience that for yourself, that's where the shift happens, right? And I mean that it doesn't have to look
100%.
exactly like that. It shows up different for so many people, but it's
And
undeniable.
it was so perfectly what needed to be said, and it was so perfectly she didn't know any of and that's the thing when you realize like she had no concept of why that would be important to you or how that would come like that is powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, being able to open up to these gifts that we all have, everyone's innately intuitive. It is part of who you are. It's how you're made. You just shut it down sometimes. That's all.
Okay, one last question and then we'll wrap up. My last question is, what are the rituals in addition to Reiki have you incorporated into your life, your lifestyle?
Yeah. More like you talked about, like I have to move every day. I have to move my body. It's what this morning I was like, I'm hiking. Like we literally hike almost every single morning with the dog, being in nature and out. One of the reasons we chose this home is because we can be on the trail in 10 minutes. I have to be really mindful of how I eat. So I make ritual around it. I enjoy cooking whole, plant and really clean meat. I try to eat tons of veggies and not a lot of processed foods. And if I don't, my body reacts to it because I am more sensitive to things these days. That to me is ritual. We make mealtime in our house, such a ritual. I like to sit together. We like to pray over every meal. That's something that's really important to me. I have my cup of cacao multiple times per week and I actually sit with it and enjoy it and taste it and have a full sensory activation.
Yeah.
And then, I go more towards some of the biohacking stuff. Like I love cold plunging. We're looking at a new one for the house because we want to be able to hop in more often. Getting into water, baths, the pool, like those things I have to do multiple times per week to cleanse my own body. Just like I taught you guys, I'm like salt either in your body or outside your body with Epsom salt baths and electrolytes is so important when you're working on a lot of people, just clearing and cleansing your system often. So those are a lot of the things that I do on a weekly basis. And of course, my self-practice is the one thing I do almost every single day. I'm not a traditional, I don't have a traditional meditation practice, but I sit with myself Reiki practice almost every single day. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I actually want to do another one of these just on rituals. Maybe you should do a master class on that.
Yeah, I could. Yeah, why would you not make your life magical if you have the option? And we all have the option.
Well, and that's the thing with energy work in general and any of these modalities, like we can make them whatever we want. We can make them fun. And the fact that Reiki doesn't have a very specific structure per se,
Yeah.
like play. I think that has been the most exciting thing about being level 2 attuned, because that's what I'm excited about. To be able to offer a Reiki session virtually or in person and make it whatever I want to make it. and know
100%.
the other person's going to receive anyway.
Absolutely, and you're gonna work so differently than I would work or that anyone else would work, and that's why people find you, your unique imprint and signature on this language that comes through. And
It's
so that's what I tell people, like, there could never be enough practitioners. You may say something in a way that helps someone have a doorway into this work that I couldn't articulate just because of my background, my experience, the way I speak. And so, how do we help more people feel held, loved, nourished, nurtured, all the things? It's so important.
it's so beautiful. How
Yeah.
can people find you? What is the best Instagram for them to follow you at?
Yeah, so you can find me. My personal Instagram is this is Danielle Nicole, or you can go on to modernreiki.co. I update my personal one more. We're working on a game plan to have both of them updated more often. um, and if you're ever in Scottsdale, you can look up the Portal AZ and come visit us there for an in-person session or class as well.
Love it. The portal is amazing. Danielle is amazing. Thank you so much again for being here today.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate your time and you and just your generosity always.
Thank you for having me. It was so good to see your face and to chat this morning.
Have a good day. Enjoy your root chakra
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
experience. Okay.
All right,
Bye.
bye.